All right. Letting a few folks join here. Hopefully everyone had access. Good evening, everyone. We're going to get started. My name is Erica Guidaboni from Tool Design Group. I'm here tonight with Matt Schuman, town engineer for Winchester. We're here to talk about the Kenwin Road traffic calming project. A couple housekeeping items. We are recording this meeting so that we can upload it to the project website after this. So I want to let everyone know that. And right now, I am the host of the meeting and would ask that when we get to discussion at the end of the slides, which shouldn't take more than about 10 minutes or so, we'll open it up for discussion and I'll ask folks to raise their hand and I will unmute you and we can go through the discussion that way. So I'm going to hand it off to Matt and share my screen real quick and we'll jump right in. All right, should be able to see the beginning of the presentation, Matt, and just let me know when you want to switch slides.
Can I do that or do I need you to do it?
I'm going to be doing that, I think.
Okay.
Best if you just ask me to do it. Thanks.
Sure.
Yep.
And like Erica said, it's a relatively short presentation, but thank you for coming to our meeting to provide an update on the Kenwin Road traffic calming project. If you want to just go to the next slide. I'll just say briefly how we got here. I do recognize some names on the attendance. So again, thank you for coming. But this started in 2024 with a traffic calming study that the town did. We did hold a meeting in January of last year, and we discussed a couple different options for traffic calming on Kenwin Road, including speed humps, chokers, which is basically a narrowing of the road by narrowing a little bit on each side of the street, and chicanes, which is basically what you saw when we did our interim installation in the fall, kind of acting like a parked car on the street. We also talked about some changes to the parking regulations that were relatively well received to allow parking to happen a little bit less restricted in some areas, and also creating alternating parking to have to kind of mimic the chicanes that we ended up coming up with, and just create some more kind of turbulence on the road for traffic calming. And then we're not going to talk in a lot of detail tonight, but we did talk about the Highland Ave and Kenwin Road intersection and adding in a crosswalk with rapid flashing beacon, which are those yellow flashing lights that flash when touched by a pedestrian. And we had looked at whether a four-way stop at Kenwin Road would work, and at that time it did not. We received some feedback at the meeting, which we then took and sort of put together for a select board meeting. That was in June. Again, we went with the chicane concept, and the select board approved the installation on an interim basis of the chicanes, and also supported our going to town meeting to seek funding for full construction for permanent installation. Fortunately, in the fall, we went to fall town meeting and we did get an appropriation of $150,000 for construction. And that leads us to tonight, where we're just going to give you a brief update. I did put on the website, did put on the presentation the website, and there's a little clicker there, a little QR code if you need to access it. We can go on to the next slide. So, you all live on the neighborhood, so I'm sure you saw the flex posts we put in October. These were to provide an interim sort of seasonal installation of the chicanes and also see how they worked, kind of prove them in real life and see if we received any feedback. So we did install the 3 chicanes, which are very similar to what we had in our concept plan. And we did do some traffic counts to observe volume and speed, both before and during the interim installation. So if you want to go on to the next slide. I know this slide's a little bit hard to read, but The gist is we did see a pretty significant change and reduction in speed. If you look at the average speed and the 85th percentile speeds, the 85th percentile means that 85% of vehicles are traveling at or below that speed. You'll see that, there wasn't major changes, right? A mile per hour, 2 mile per hour difference from both before and after. But when you look at the percent of drivers traveling at or above certain speeds, you see a more significant reduction. So, for example, the 30-mile-per-hour speeds were reduced by 10 to 15%, and 35 miles per hour, roughly half in each instance. And that's saying to us that, even though you're not seeing much of a change in the average and 85th percentile speeds, that the people who are going faster are not going quite as fast as they were before. If you want to go on to the next slide. Staff did take some observations during the peak hours a couple of times just to see how things were overall working out. We observed the parking, we observed cars passing each other. We didn't see really any congestion happening as a result of the speed humps. There definitely was some variability in how folks approach them, and particularly when they're vehicles coming in both directions. I know I was out there, and sometimes someone would yield, sometimes two cars would kind of try and pass each other, which through the chicane, which is totally acceptable. That's how we designed them. But there was a little bit of difference in the usage. We did look in with the police department to see if there were any crashes that happened as a result of the chicanes, and there was a report of I think a mirror being crushed, but it wasn't in the vicinity of the chicane, and it didn't appear to be related to the chicane. So based on that, we felt that the chicanes were fairly effective in achieving the goal of calming traffic on the streets. I just wanted to point out before I hand it over to Erica to discuss further. We did receive some feedback during the interim installation. Some people were really happy, some people were less happy. But in general, we heard, the concerns we heard were that maybe people weren't slowing down or perhaps speeding up. And, in our opinion, based on the data we collected, that doesn't seem to be the case. And, there may be some people speeding up, but overall the higher speeds appeared to be down. We did receive some concerns about vehicles maybe traveling in the middle of the road or on the wrong side of the road. And again, that is something that was observed from time to time. But I think, you have to think again about a parked car on the street and the mimicking of a parked car. So, if a car was parked on the street, someone would be sort of moving over to get around them. So we felt that we were really comfortable with how that worked out and didn't feel that was a major concern. And then finally, we heard some concerns raised about potential for snow plowing. And obviously with the snow we had, finally having a snowy winter this year, we understand those concerns. And, we've talked to DPW a couple of times about this issue. They haven't really raised any concerns related to plowing. They know in some instances they have to be a little extra careful or come back after a storm and do a little bit extra work to do snow clearing. But that said, we do have the ability to adjust the chicane locations if necessary. You'll recall during our previous meetings, we discussed trying to preserve as much parking as possible. And for that reason, we left the chicane sort of off center between driveways so that you could get a car parked in that area. We could move the chicanes so that they're in the middle of the area between the driveways, but that would mean that there's no longer parking in that area. And that's something, if folks have feedback on, we'd love to hear. So with that said, I'll turn it over to Erica to provide you a little bit more update on where we're heading. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Matt. I'm just going to touch on real quick a little bit about the constructed chicanes and kind of what they'll look like. I do think pictures speak a lot more than my description, so I did want to put on the screen a picture of a chicane. This is actually in Ohio, but it is very similar to kind of the treatment that we're talking about today. I do want to make sure that folks are focusing their attention on the piece that has that sort of diagonal striped sign in it. That's the chicane, and not the other side of the street, which is actually this road as it's pictured is more narrow than what we would be constructing on Kenwin Road. So speaking a little bit to the kind of engineering detail that's a typical chicane on the screen, just wanted to speak a little bit about the details within it. We're talking about building the chicane about a foot off of the curb line on Kenwin Road that will allow for stormwater to flow and drainage to not be impacted by the chicanes. We will be putting a reflective sign that you can kind of see on the screen, the diamond shaped. That'll ensure that these are visible in the evening and for plowing and things of that nature. They're approximately about 20 feet long, as you can see, maybe on the screen a little bit if you squint. And they're going to vary a little bit in width, but they should be similar to what you've seen if you were able to kind of take a look at the flex post interim condition. That was sort of a layout of what they're going to end up looking like. So that should give you a feel of that. And really the intention here and the critical measurement is that we are 16 feet of clearance between the curb line and the edge of the chicane for passing and for fire and emergency response. Another element of this that I want to draw attention to is the beveled curb will be facing the street side of the chicane. So essentially it's a mountable curb that has a kind of edge to it that allows for emergency response to essentially hop the curb on the edge if they needed to in an emergency. And lastly, the kind of green area there is representing low maintenance plantings that we are planning to incorporate into the chicane, so they will not be, I know that we heard that concern at the last meeting. People were looking for landscaped and not kind of concrete topped chicanes for aesthetic purposes and for, you know, a little bit of green infrastructure type thing. So next steps, the engineering and DPW departments are looking to reinstall the interim chicanes in the spring if the snow ever melts. Later in the year, 3 constructed landscape chicanes will be installed along the same locations unless we have some conversation about slight shifting over at this meeting. Those chicanes will be constructed with curbing and landscape this year. In addition, the other elements of the project include installing permanent parking signage. So it'll be parking on one side of the street, switching sides throughout the corridor, being really thoughtful about where we put those signs. We don't want to oversign a residential street. Installing fresh pavement markings at the intersections, just kind of like within, I believe it's 25 feet on either end of the corridor at Highland and Washington, a short center line and crosswalks and stop bars. Additionally, we will the DPW will be constructing a new crosswalk with ADA ramps across the southern leg of Highland Ave at Kenwin Road at Appalachian Road, and that will include a rapid flashing beacon as well. And lastly, DPW has made a commitment to maintaining the landscaping within the 3 chicanes. Although I do think that there is an ask here if anyone is feeling enthusiastic about potentially supporting the landscaping and, you know, keeping it beautiful on your street. I know that DPW would welcome some collaboration on the maintenance of the landscaping as well. With that, I think we're ready to open it up for discussion. Matt, if you had anything else I didn't cover, otherwise I can ask folks to raise their hand to speak.
Oh, I think that was perfect.
Great. All right, we're going to do raised hands for discussion now. And I'll unmute you. Happy to pull up any of the slides as well. If anyone has questions on anything that we saw. And raising hands, just if folks aren't familiar with Zoom, is under the React button at the bottom of the page. Okay, I'm not seeing any raised hands, but I see Robert Deering is on screen, so I'm going to unmute you in case you are looking to speak.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Just a couple of questions. I think you covered the drainage, so that the normal drain water that comes down the gutter in a normal rainstorm will still flow in on the gutter.
Yes.
Is that correct?
Yeah, correct.
Okay. And what's the total cost of this project?
Matt, you want to?
We put in a capital request for $150,000, which was funded at fall town meeting. We are going to work with DPW through their contractors to minimize the costs. But we do not have a final estimate based on what their contract is. They haven't gone out to contract yet for this upcoming year.
Well, is it around $150,000? I heard that.
That was the appropriation. I mean,
Pardon me?
That was the appropriation. We hope
Okay.
it comes in less.
I mean, that's just a number to go. Now, when I looked at your traffic study, when you put it up and the reduction in speed and all that, there wasn't a heck of a lot of change from one before and after. And there's only one, I think there was a kind of a bigger change, but most of it was 1 to 2%. And my question is, do you think it's worthwhile to spend $150,000 to we get a 2% reduction in certain? There'll still be speed, and there's still going to be car speed. So I don't think that is a worthwhile investment to spend that kind of money, and that's all you get out of it. That's my opinion. I'll express that to other people at the same time. I think you address the drainage in the study. Now, that has got to do nothing for the 2,000 cars that go up and down the street each day. How do you address that issue? Because that's the real problem. Speed is not a problem on Kenwin Road any more than any street in town, where they all have cars that speed. They're not going up and down every day. Matter of fact, because there's so many cars going up and down the street, it's hard to find a time frame when there's a lot of speeding. So I don't think speeding is a high priority from my point of view, especially for $150,000. So how do we address the 2,000 cars that go up and down the street? It's probably maybe only 1 or 2 other streets I can think of town possibly that could approach that. But so what's your idea? You guys are the experts. What would you do?
Well, I'll just I want to address your first comment. I appreciate your point around the data. I think, when you look at it a little more closely, it is a, multiple mile per hour reduction in both directions for the average and the 85th percentile speeds on the corridor. And actually, I think it'll be more effective when it's a constructed element rather than, the flex post element. When you look a little more closely, I know it's a little bit nuanced, but Matt was kind of getting to the point where the higher speeds that are happening significantly less frequently with this. So that's what's really impressive, is that the threshold of 30, 35, 40 mile per hour. So those people that are driving pretty fast, that you really, you're standing on the sidewalk, you're standing out in your front lawn and you really feel it. That's happening at a lot less of a rate than it was before, up to, 25%.
I don't disagree with it that it's been reduced. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying it isn't reduced and it'd be. What I'm just saying is, for an investment of $150,000, that's not much of a return on that money, considering that we have a bigger issue of how do we handle 2,000 cars going up and down the street each day. I mean, now I'm retired now, so I see a lot of things go on, and I see, you times when they come down, there's 6 or 7 cars that come across um, Main Street down Cross Street to the lights.
Mhm.
Now, once they start up, that it's a solid line, 6, 7 cars coming up. So if you're trying to get out of your driveway, forget it. And then when they get past, there's 6 or 7 others that come down from Highland Avenue that cut through. So it is a big problem, and it's been getting worse because there's more cars drive. So my thing is that we need to address that as well, not just the speed, because the speed is not. I grant you, it's reduced a little bit, not much, but that's not the biggest problem. The biggest problem is the 2,000 cars. The other problem we're going to have with your scheme, there's now last year we had 2 houses across the street from me that were under construction with the trucks parking there. There was twice that the school bus couldn't get up the street. Now, one of the neighbors said to me, I'm planning to do major construction in my house next year. Where am I going, trucks going to park? That's a big question, a problem when they do that. Now, we had we had one time we had 3 cruise cars here because of road rage between people. So those are the things that, you don't see. But when you live here every day, and I've lived here for 40 some odd years, you see it. Now, 2,000 cars a day is a big number on a residential street that doesn't have yellow lines in the middle. So I still think that you guys are traffic people, and you should be able to come up with some solution.
Thanks, Bob.
Let me offer my favorite one, and I know you're going to give me what the story is, but you see, we have in Winchester as well. You look at every surrounding town, and they have streets that say residents only from such and such a day. Now, hear me out before you say anything. You could put 2 signs on either end to say no resident traffic, 7 to 9 and 4 to 6 only. Okay. Now you're going to say, well, they're going to go different ways and all that. What we got to try to do is get people to change their patterns of, maybe they go earlier, maybe they go later, maybe they stay and go down Main Street. But you can put it up there for 3 months. Have the signs, put it up. If it doesn't work, take it down. We're going to spend $150,000 for this. And if it doesn't work and we have problems, we're stuck with it. Okay, so there's no
Thanks, Bob.
going back unless you want to spend another 150 to take it out. So
Definitely,
what I'm saying is we
definitely
need
understand
to,
your concerns.
huh?
I definitely understand your concerns. You brought them up at the select board meeting. You brought them up at fall town meeting. I mean, we definitely understand and hear them. However, our plan is to proceed with the implementation as we were approved at town meeting and as we were approved by the select board.
No, I'm not arguing that. I'm not arguing it at all. I'm just saying you did this. Now you got to look at what do you do with 2,000 cars? Because now, if you have that same $2,000 car, but the flow is interrupted because you can't get a continuous flow with the bump outs and all that. So it may be worse. So how are you going to address that handling 2,000 cars per day on Kenwin Road? That's a simple question, and there should be maybe not a simple answer, but an answer to it.
Yep. I do want to allow your neighbors to speak, and we can get back to you if we haven't addressed your
I said
question.
I said my piece.
All right. Thank you so much. Thank you. All right. I'm going to shift to Maria, and I apologize if I'm not getting your pronunciation correct. You should be able to unmute now.
You did very well with my name, better than anyone else. So I live across the road from Bob. I had a couple of questions. So one was about snow. I think he said that they would be plowing and then they'd come back and have another go later. And I was just wondering what that would mean for people who are commuting. Would that mean that we'd have partial plowing and then have to wait until later in the day, or if you can help me understand what that is in practice, and then I'll ask my second question straight away. Um, and that's about dangerous driving rather than overall speed. So we see people do a variety of really quite wacky things on the road, trying to drive around the school bus, to Bob's position, get into chicken fights about, like they're pointing at each other that should be easily solved. But so if we notice an increase, one, will we be tracking for an increase in dangerous behavior? And two, is there a mitigation plan that we will be able to employ if that happens?
Thank you. Matt, do you want to take the plowing question, or do you want me to take a pass at it?
Yeah, I mean, as I mentioned, there's been multiple discussions with DPW regarding plowing. They have no concerns regarding plowing. However, we did hear during the installation some potential concerns about maybe more snow being at driveways based on how the plows go. So, I wouldn't expect there to be any difference in how the road is plowed now, but I do know in some areas they will come out after the storm and they'll do a double check and they'll do additional plowing if necessary. So I don't see it really being an issue, but I wanted to bring it up because it was a comment that came up during the interim installation.
Yeah, and I just to add to that a little bit, I know town already does have some curb extensions, kind of bump outs at crosswalks. So this is different because there's no crosswalk there, but I know that, DPW has been working with curb extensions and bump outs, and has been plowing those, hopefully successfully, although I know this is a tough time for a lot of that right now, but they are aware of this type of treatment and are working with them now, so it shouldn't be anything new to them.
Okay, thank you. And then the second question about monitoring for dangerous activity and then mitigation parts afterwards.
Well, as I mentioned, we did go out there and we observed traffic and we didn't really see anything causing concern. It's exactly the same as having a car parked on the streets.
So not to interrupt you, but we already see really bad behavior from that. So we've had to report back to NRT about people going around the bus, and then to Bob's position, we're keeping the economy alive with all the work we're doing on this road with, all these trucks parked on there. And so I don't know, unless you came and sat here for a month, if you'd have a good mechanism for measuring that. And now I will mute myself, but yes, thank you.
Okay. Thanks.
All right. John, I'm going to ask you to unmute yourself. Should be able to now. There you go.
Does that work?
Yes.
Great. Well, thank you for organizing all of this. I think it's a great project and will really help the traffic on Kenwin Road. And to address Bob's concern about the volume, I think the speed and the volume will go somewhat hand in hand. As you start to reduce the speed and people find it less convenient to speed up and down Kenwin, they may go on another street. So I think we could see a reduction in traffic once all this is installed, which would certainly be beneficial, as Bob mentioned. And a question about the curb material. Will it be the same granite that's already on the street?
Yes, it'll be granted.
Great. And I think it's wonderful that the DPW will maintain the landscaping, but I'd certainly be willing to help out and maybe organize some of the neighbors. I'm in the center of the street, so we have one right in the center to help keep that looking good. I think the other neighbors would probably volunteer to help out too.
Yeah, we can put you in touch.
About the parking on the street. I think we heard early on that the overall parking is really not reduced, or maybe it's reduced by 1 or 2 spaces. There's really no overall reduction in the parking when this is completed. Is that correct?
So it's kind of interesting right now. And I say now, when we did the study, I'm actually not sure exactly what it looks like today. I think we might have pulled some of those signs. for a long time, it was restricted kind of on the Highland Ave end, certain hours of the day, and then unrestricted as you went kind of further down towards Washington. Right now, you're actually not in compliance with kind of town bylaws around clearance because you are allowed to park on both sides of the street and it's too narrow to allow that. So people aren't really in practice doing that. And so it's kind of the way we're designing it, it's the parking is now like legally going to be on one side of the street only, and it switches sides once to allow for a little bit of a, as Matt mentioned, friction on the street. So it's not a clear path down.
And that's pretty much what happens now.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Well, thank you very much.
Thank you. All right, Richard should be able to unmute.
Well, I'm actually Julia, but we're here with Richard. I just want to say I think that you've done a lot of good work, and we live on the corner of Highland and Kenwin, and I'm particularly glad that there's going to be a flashing light. It is really difficult to get across from Kenwin to Appalachian, and I know that's an expensive part, and so I think that's a great investment. It'll be much safer for children, and so many people, it's just hard to get across that corner. I think it will be much safer. So I'm delighted about that.
And also in the email, but you didn't mention it tonight, it is said that you're going to be painting a double yellow line at the beginning,
Yes.
at the ends of the road. And I'm really happy about that. That should prevent some crashes that we've seen happen here on our corner of Kenwin and Highland by people coming off of Highland and just acting like it's a one-way road going down and running into a car that's coming up the street. So thank you for doing that. That's going to be a great improvement.
Thank you.
Thanks.
All right, not seeing other hands raised. I'll give it a couple of minutes to ensure everyone had a moment to provide comment. Sounds like we got one volunteer, Matt. So that's great. Maybe some organization there.
So yeah, I was gonna say I will, when we get closer to the work, I can put you in touch with DPW. I know they're gonna be working with a landscaping supply company to choose the plants. So I can, try and get you some more information at that point.
All right. I'm not seeing any more raised hands. As mentioned, this meeting will be available on the project website that Matt shared earlier in the meeting. I'm sure you can also Google it if you weren't able to write that URL down. And you should be able to reach out with any other follow-up questions, and you'll be seeing some flex posts pop up once the snow melts. If it does, it'll be a minute. But anything else you want to make sure we convey tonight, Matt?
No, again, I appreciate your taking the time to come to the meeting, and we've definitely heard a lot of the feedback, both good and bad, and we hope to have a successful project. Thanks.
All right. Good night, everybody. Thank you so much for your participation.